Hi, welcome to BA Brew. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Simon.
And I'm Sandra.
Today we're going to talk about benefits management and realisation. And this is a subject that Simon contacted us about to suggest as a topic for the brew. Simon, why did you suggest that we should have a brew talking about benefits?
Well, I've found, since I actually went on the course with yourself, Jonathan, I've found the subject really, really interesting and one of the most valuable modules actually on the BCS syllabus in terms of the value that it can bring to an organisation. And I tried implementing a formal benefits planning and realisation approach at my company, and I've had some successes and some challenges as well. So I thought it would be very interesting for those of us who either are new to the subject or already know the subject and are wanting a discussion point, to just have a chat about it and find out some pointers and share some challenges.
Brilliant. I think I've shared with you in the past, I've had loads of challenges with benefit management and realisation myself in my own career. It's a subject that I think is often ignored and swept under the carpet and maybe not given the focus and attention that it deserves. So thank you for suggesting it. So Sandra, your experience of benefits management, good, bad, indifferent?
I think it can be hot and cold. I think it's one of those things that is taken quite seriously up until they get the business case signed off. And then it's onwards and upwards with all the challenges that a project brings. And sometimes the benefits are forgotten. And especially on a long project or program, those benefits can change over time. And sometimes the reasons for doing that project don't actually change alongside the benefits. So I think it's quite a forgotten area of projects in a lot of cases.
Yeah, there seems to be, okay, what are the costs, what are the benefits to get the business case approved and get the investment funding, and then depending on the organisation and the culture and its approach to change, the business case can be forgotten about during the course of the project in some organisations, and that delivering the project's often quite difficult. And so this thing called benefit realisation just seems like hard work and something else to do that we haven't got time to do. It seems to be a culture around, and that for me is a real problem, because what it means is that we deliver changes and we don't always check to see what's the outcome that we got, and the real problem there is that we're not learning from both our successes and our failures in terms of the outcomes of change, which is for me just flabbergasting. That how can that be the case in lots of organizations? Certainly in my experience, that is the case. We don't look at what are the outcomes, what are the business benefits that we achieved as a result of our really difficult change journeys.
I think you're absolutely right there, Jonathan. And I think, we often talk about post-implementation reviews, PIRs, but how often are the actual benefits discussed in those PIRs? It's generally what went wrong on the project, what could I do better next time, what did we forget to do? It's not about the benefits. I think the other thing to remember is we talk about business case a lot. How many of our end users and our customers, within our own organisation actually see sight of that business case to see what the benefits actually are?
Yeah. I've certainly talked to lots of business analysts that don't see sight of the business case. So I ask routinely, do you get involved in, do you see business cases to lots of different BA professionals? And sometimes they say, no, I'm not allowed to see it. And for me, that's again, I'm going to use that word flabbergasting, because how can you analyze the business, help to build the business change if you don't know what the benefits are, the outcomes that you're trying to achieve? Yes, very strange. So it's probably worth, just for the audience, maybe defining what a benefit is. And I could go to one of you for this, but I'll take this one on. It's an advantage for and on behalf of a stakeholder. So that implies that it's owned by a stakeholder. And it's an advantage, it's a positive outcome for the benefit, not for the benefit of the organisation. Ideally, it's going to be aligned to strategy. Simon, I know that you've worked a lot in the past with third-party vendors. I used to work at a third-party software vendor, I think, and we've had some interesting discussions, I think, about the sales process and how the sales process for a consultancy or a software vendor influences the business case and this subject of benefits. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, it does depend on very much on the business model of the vendor. So some vendors will want to build a lasting relationship. And I know that in one of the previous BA Brews, you talked about the, was it the OMBO or something like that, the mutually beneficial outcome?
Yeah, optimally mutually beneficial outcomes.
That's the one.
Mike Williams, I think.
And indeed, some of the software vendors will want to achieve that and are in it for the long term.
Yeah.
But then also you'll get other vendors who may be wanting to implement something and not really that interested in the longer term. And what you might find with some of those vendors is that they'll want to get involved. First of all, they'll want to find out who the decision makers are. Mm-hmm. And then they'll want to get in communication with those decision makers as quickly as possible, even before sometimes a project's actually started up or any kind of formal procurement process has started. And that used to mystify me for a little while until I worked out that what they're trying to do is build up an investment from those stakeholders in their time. I was recently reading a really interesting book called Sway, about the pull of irrational behavior by Brafman. Okay. And it talks about three really important key factors in why people might make irrational decisions. And I think it's quite relevant.
Fascinating. Tell us more, Simon.
So the first one's loss aversion, and that's a massively powerful part of the psyche, in that if you feel that you might be losing something, that's more powerful than any benefit you might ever have.
So that they feel they've lost their time if they don't then do something.
Yeah, I've invested all this time. I've built this relationship with this wonderful salesperson. If I pull out now, I'm losing that investment and that time. Another one's value attribution even, which is the initial perception. So if someone perceives that as being a valuable product and that there's business benefit in investing in that product, it's very difficult for them to change their mind after that first initial thoughts. And then finally, there's something called diagnosis bias, which is where you just are almost blind to any contradictory ideas or even evidence to that your first perception might have been wrong. Yeah. And this book is great because it's got a number of stories in it that explain how sometimes absolutely devastatory events happen as a result of these three factors working together and building up until people are making totally irrational decisions. And I think this actually plays a factor in procurement quite often, in that people feel bought into a certain path. And unless you have your own benefits mapped out, it's very difficult to actually move people back onto the path of realizing your own benefits.
It's interesting because that the BA then, as I say, imagine the business analyst is working with a stakeholder who's got that, they've been swayed, to use the term for the book, looking with an objective view as to whether or not this project should or shouldn't proceed from an objective, what's the outcomes, what are the benefits. That can be really problematic for the BA to try and negotiate that sort of situation. Sounds like a fascinating model. I think that the bias towards our own abilities as well. We often think we're more able than maybe we are in terms of delivery of the project and of the benefits. And we think we're going to succeed maybe where others have failed to do a similar such thing. There's a lot of bias there.
I think you brought up a really interesting point there, Simon, about some of the vendors targeting those senior managers that can influence those decisions. And one of the challenges I've had, certainly in my role as a senior BA in strategy and projects over the years, is that sometimes they're targeting those people that can make the decisions. That's absolutely fine, but they don't understand how the business actually works. They can see the end goal that they want, and they can see the result that they want. They want a new product, they want to increase this, they want to decrease that. But they can't actually see the steps that are involved and the complexities that are involved in their organization in getting anything done. And sometimes, we use third-party software and we use third-party consultancy, but sometimes they don't understand how complicated the businesses are, especially in this world of, where we've got businesses acquiring other businesses, and increasing their estates exponentially without actually integrating that estate. So I think it's quite interesting that they make those decisions very high up, but don't necessarily understand the impact it has on delivering it through a complicated business model.
Absolutely. I think another danger as well is when the third-party suppliers, partners want to help the senior stakeholders build a business case, and they end up backwards building a business case, so making the business case fit the product that they're trying to sell. And the reason that's a challenge and is a danger is that they've built their own USP into the business case, their own unique selling points, which means that when you go out to the market as part of your formal procurement exercise, it's very difficult to have any competition from other vendors because you've written this very custom business case that fits a handful of suppliers. So that can be a bit of a challenge in itself sometimes.
So I just want to ask, who's got the cat? Because I heard the cat then.
I apologise. Very loud Bengal kitten. I do apologise.
We've got a new cat in the Hunsley household just in the last 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
He's not here at the moment. I'm not working at home at the moment. But yeah, is it food time or something, Sandra?
No, it's either going to be a delivery driver, a postman, or a cat.
Or a dog.
One of these, isn't it?
It's our first cat that's appeared on the brew.
Really, she might well interrupt even more in a minute, so I apologise if she does.
I'll try and go back on track. One of the organisations that I've worked with in the past has someone who's in the role. I think they're called a benefit manager or a benefit realisation director, and they work for a third-party software integration firm, and their job is to basically build business cases that helps them to sell the product. And I work with that person, and I personally don't think they were competent. I don't think they were someone that I would trust to build a business case for a small project, let alone a large, multi-million pound transformation. But I am going to just say though, I know of a different software vendor that they talked to me about a sale of a product as a certification solution into a university, and the university procured the product, and this was to produce things like degree certificates, and the IT solution was working fine, absolutely perfect. But what happened in the organization was they chose not to use the solution, so they got none of the benefit from having completed the project to install the new solution for certification software as a solution. And so it's not the vendor's fault. And I know that we probably talk about POPIT a little bit too much, but people, organization, process, information, and technology, the tech doesn't deliver the benefit on its own. You've got to have it along with your processes, the people, the organization, culture, the strategy. It's all going to be aligned and owned. And it's not always the software vendor's fault, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get to, because sometimes it's inside the organization that there's a failure to own the execution elements around the purchase of the software.
And I think it's quite difficult sometimes, because if you're buying third-party software, I think it's essential that you have your internal BAs working alongside those vendors. Sometimes it can be quite difficult to get that relationship and that working practice initiated and working properly. So I think that for me, that's where the BA role comes into its own, as a negotiator, as a conflict manager, as that bridge between different parties. So for me, that BA role is absolutely essential there, but sometimes I think it's probably not utilised to its full extent.
Yeah. One of my most useful workshops I've done in the past 2 years, my favourite workshops, was a benefits mapping workshop, doing a dependency map. But I did it as an interactive workshop with some of the key stakeholders involved in the change. Between us, we were able to work out all of the enabling changes, or all of the main enabling changes. And a lot of them on the project I was working on, because it was a compliance project, included a lot of the governance teams.
Hmm.
And through involving them in that process, I was able to actually have people volunteer to be change owners
Brilliant.
within a single workshop, and
Mm.
came out of it with actions and owners, which from one workshop is quite rare. You can do that, especially when you're working with multiple governance teams. And actually it really set us up well to list out the deliverables for the project and work out who the key stakeholders were, and the timeline and everything from that single workshop. And absolutely, unless you're talking about the enabling changes, which include all of those parts of the POPIT triangle,
Yep.
there's a real possibility that your new shiny IT solution will sit on a shelf and gain dust.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Absolutely.
Do you find that sometimes people are scared of the change because they don't understand those benefits? So those end users don't understand what this change is about. It's going to make their life easier. It's going to improve their processes. And sometimes they just don't understand that and they're just scared of it. Yeah,
I think communication of the benefits right at the outset of any project is absolutely fundamental for that buy-in. Without that, you've got this ongoing threat in any business of business as usual. And it tends to trump anything else that's going on. Yeah. Oh, we've got an audit, we have to drop tools. If you're in the middle of a project, that can just completely bring you to a halt. So communicating the benefit to the individuals involved, in my mind, is absolutely paramount to getting in that buy-in from the business.
Absolutely agree.
Can I throw a curveball in? Where do you think Agile fits in the context of benefit management and realization? Does it fit? What are your thoughts?
I've spoken to a few of the product owners here recently about this, and because a lot of the Agile teams are set up to work on products, which is quite a commercial philosophy, they're more likely to talk about value than they are benefits. And because they have an ongoing model, a cyclical model, and they don't have to come off a project at the end, which is one of the...
Because it's constant element of the product.
Exactly. They can constantly work on value and constantly see if they can gain more and more value or benefits. You could probably interchange the two, and don't have to let go of it at the end of the project. And like the business analyst and the project manager, who when it gets to the end of the project needs to find someone to pass that benefits realization plan to, the product owner can keep working on it long term.
In a way, then, it sounds quite positive. There's long-term ownership of the business outcomes via the product owner, it sounds as though, and that in that context, it could be beneficial for the organization in terms of attaining the outcomes.
I think it can, but I think the only issue, one of the issues I see with Agile is it's great for communication with the new project team because you're having your daily stand-ups, you're having your scrums, etc. But what you're not necessarily having the time to do is talk to that wider community who the change is actually being fed out to. So sometimes I think the pace of change within Agile sometimes leads to lack of communication in that wider audience sometimes. And perhaps benefits are perhaps a bit of a casualty of that sometimes, because that's not what's being focused on at that moment. It's the actual change.
I've certainly worked with Agile practitioners, and they're rare, but some Agile practitioners believe that Agile means no documentation, so working software over comprehensive documentation. They interpret that as working software over no documentation at all, and so no business case, no benefits, no outcomes that are written down, and I don't see that as desirable Agile practice, and I'd call it cowboy Agile in all honesty. But you will meet some practitioners that think, well, benefits are against the philosophy of Agile. No, I don't think it is. They're both outcome focused. They're both trying to engender collaboration and solutions that work. So they should be compatible in terms of two philosophies. One of the most mature Agile practices that I've come across uses uses the scoreboard, as I'll call it. So the business team and the change folk, they're all working together, and they're looking at sales of products and lead times for deliveries and numbers of complaints. And as they refine their products and their services, they're constantly looking at the metrics that are important for the business, and that's their focus. And for me, that's a way of thinking about benefit management and realization. It's just looking at the scoreboard for your business, your organization, and trying to make sure that everyone's focused towards improving the outcomes, whatever it is that's important for the business. I just wanted to ask before we close, what else do we need to cover on benefit management, benefit realization? Any final thoughts, Simon?
I just think it's hugely important that businesses take it seriously and employ their own business analysts to consider the different areas of POPIT at the start of the project. Because at the end of the day, even if you're working with a company that is very flexible and wants to work with you to realize those values, there's going to be some compromises. And you have to know what's valuable to the business to know what to compromise on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's a really important subject for any business to think about in depth.
Brilliant. Sandra, any final thoughts?
I think for me, it's about continuity. So making sure that throughout the project, we understand the benefits from senior management right down to end users, and continuing that through any reviews that we do and feeding that on into the next project. You need to understand what benefits you've realized and what hasn't worked, just as much as what has worked for the next project. So for me, it's all about communication, absolutely communication, and making sure we understand what a benefit is.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, I'm not going to add any further thoughts, but I just want to say thank you to Simon for suggesting this as a topic. Sandra, thank you for joining us today. Thanks to everyone that's watched and listened to The Brew. Please do keep sending in your ideas for future episodes. We really do welcome the ideas. If you've got any, please send them through to BA Brew at AssistKD.com. Thank you.